Hello, my name is Jennifer Keesmat, and I'm going to speak to you today about the art of neighborhood. Now, this talk is a bit meandering. It might not move in a straight line from point A to point B, so you're going to have to stick with me. If we want to talk about the art of neighborhood, it behooves us to first ponder what it is that we mean by art. The trouble is, I took an entire university course on the subject of beauty, and I can imagine that art would lead me down a similar path. So let us say at the very least that maybe we can agree to define art as in fact being something that is fluid. Art implies movement. Art is also something that is fundamentally changing, particularly from one century to the next. Our definition of art has evolved over time in good and significant ways, I would argue. If something is identified as art, we give it value, sometimes commercial value, but not always. And that value matters because we have given that art some kind of meaning, or we've asked ourselves a question about meaning as a consequence of the art. But despite this meaning, it is still fundamentally subjective. What yanks someone's chain does absolutely nothing for the guy sitting next to him. When I think of a neighborhood, I imagine a place with a geography, boundaries, edges. Usually there's a center of some sort. I do, of course, think like an urban planner. That is my calling. So I may have a tendency to over-rationalize, to try and impose order where there is in fact none. But I can stretch myself a bit. I also think of neighborhoods as being fluid, changing, evolving, having meaning. A neighborhood, too, is subjective. We do all take our neighborhoods a little bit differently, don't we? How is it that you take yours? You might take it as a grid. A grid to planners obsessed with efficiencies is appealing because a grid is very rational. It's a rational approach to land division. You can go directly from one point to another. In fact, a grid allows you the shortest distance between 2 points, whether you're on foot, in a car, or taking public transit. But you may take your neighborhood vertical. You might take your neighborhood with a view. In some places, view is a great commodity, and it in fact defines the value of a place. Or you might take your neighborhood green. Now, green can be articulated in a whole myriad of ways. Grass is green, green fields are green. Just because you take your neighborhood green doesn't mean it's really green, you know what I mean. Or you might in fact like your neighborhood predictable, and the same with loops and lollipops with a double carport. You might like to know that everyone on the street has a mom and a dad and 2 kids sleeping peacefully in bed. Now, my 2 children, I can tell you, would much prefer their neighborhood to be puppeted. Or you might, too, take your neighborhood with a dose of nostalgia. A new urbanist neighborhood. Who, in fact, doesn't want to live in Pleasantville? Which really, in the end, new is what was old made new again. On the absolute contrary, you might in fact take your neighborhood desperate. And you might take it desperate because you have no choice to take it any other way. But even a desperate neighborhood, even a neighborhood that you may not choose, may in fact have hidden riches, may in fact have a strong sense of community. Some of us are extremely aspirational, and some of us may in fact wish that our neighborhoods are gilded. After all, who wouldn't in fact want to live in a castle? Now, I want to keep things very simple here. But if we search for the art in our neighborhood, I'm sure that we will likely find only patterns. Patterns that have a certain beauty, no doubt, but mostly we will just find patterns, simple, albeit pretty patterns. The images I have just walked through are patterns, ways of configuring a place based on a system, on a set of values, and an understanding or an expectation of ways that we want to live. But see, neighborhoods are not simply patterns on a page, and we do great harm as planners when we believe that they can mistakenly be transcribed from an image on a page into something that ultimately is intended to warm and delight. An empty street, whether it's a grid or it's green or it's gilded, at the end of the day, it's still just an empty street. Neighborhoods at their best are not simply patterns. Neighborhoods are at their best when they are, in fact, complex. And neighborhoods are at their best when they are complex in movement, in use, and in the kinds of people that they attract. When we talk about complex movement, of course, we're talking about a whole variety of ways to move about, whether it's walking, cycling, transit, cab, rolling, or taking a car. When we talk about complexity in use, we're talking about places where we can live, where we can work, where we can recreate, celebrate. And when we talk about people, we're talking about people young and old, people from afar, people from near, people owning, people renting. Despite their complexity and our inability to reduce a neighborhood to a kit of parts, we do still find a way to define and name them. We want to understand them and give them meaning. This has something to do, I suspect, with belonging. Ah, yes. The art of neighborhood at its core is about belonging. So neighborhoods must, in fact, be peopled. We love our neighborhoods in Toronto. We really do. We love our neighborhoods, and they love us back. A great neighborhood can be planned, but its best parts are the human interventions which define it, which give a sterile name a ring. And these are not the purview of city planners, but rather the purview of the people who live here. Because a neighborhood is and lives and breathes as it is inhabited, much like our art.